Hello, my name is Amanda and welcome to this video where I will be showing you how to make a very simple pair of pajamas using this pattern. It is the Simplicity 8022, and when I say that it's simple, it's very simple, very easy to make. This pattern focuses on using cotton, interlock or jersey, which is like a really stretch knit. So if those are the type of pajama pants that you're hoping to make, then this is a good one for you. So before we get into all of the nitty-gritty fun stuff, I'm just gonna let you know this is a really laid-back vlog style tutorial. I'm simply just going to be documenting the steps that I take as I make and sort of explaining all of the steps as we go. So hopefully by watching this you will be able to then go and make your own pants using this pattern. So let's quickly go through some of the stuff that we will need to make these pants, and then we'll get into it. So of course you'll need the pattern, and as I mentioned at the start, this is the Simplicity Easy to Sew 8022. This one has sizes extra small to large in kids and then extra small to large in adult, and I will be making the adult size in the extra large. So we turn the pattern over. On the back you'll find all of the measurements and also all of the types of fabrics that you can use. So the measurements that I'm looking at down the bottom here in the teen adults, this is in English but it's in yards. We don't use yards in Australia, so I'm going to go over this side even though it's in, I think it's Spanish, but it's in meterage, which is what I know best. So I have a fabric that is a 150 width, so I'm looking here at 150, and then if we go over for the extra large, I will need 2.6 meters, which I have in this fabric. This is a beautiful Pasheen cotton interlock that I just purchased from Spotlight. We also need 1.5 meters of a 2.5 centimeter elastic. I am using this size elastic. This is a 20 mil elastic and it's nice and stretchy too. So instead of using ties, I'm just going to use a ribbon just to make a little bow at the front of the pants so I can tell the difference from the front and the back. Then all of the other notions I've got here are some pins. I've got two different types of scissors, fabric scissors and thread snips. In my sewing machine I'm using a jersey needle. This is the size 9014. And I've already placed one in my machine ready to go. And then I'm also hoping to try out this new little gadget by Fiskars. It is a sewing gauge and it helps you to make consistent and accurate hemlines. So it has inches on one side and centimeters on the other. So we'll see if that helps at all. And then obviously you also need a sewing machine, which I've got all set up. And then I'm also going to be using an overlocker to finish off all of my seams. You don't have to overlock your edges as you go. Because you're using an interlock or a jersey fabric, the edges of the fabric aren't going to fray. They'll possibly just roll a little bit, but it's not crucial that you do. If you don't have an overlocker but you do want to finish the edges, you can just use a zigzag stitch on sewing machine. So to begin, you need to cut out the teen adult paper pattern. This is what it looks like. It's actually folded over, and you need to cut it down to the size that you are. I'm making the extra large, so I've just cut out around the entire edge of the extra large line. In the instructions it says to cut out pattern piece number 1, and that's it. That's all you need. If you're not sure what size you are, it does have the finished garment measurements just here. You measure yourself at the hip, and depending on which one it comes close to is the one that you make. So before we actually put a pattern piece onto our fabric, there's a few things that we need to do to prepare our fabric. It can be a little bit tricky if you haven't done it before, but once you sort of get your head around it, it's actually really quite easy. Now, because my fabric is directional, you actually have to cut the fabric in half and then lay them out so that the directions on each piece are going the right way. So let's go through that step by step. So first what you need to do is fold the fabric in half lengthways, and then with fabric scissors you want to cut down the folded line, creating 2 pieces. Then open out both of your fabric pieces and lay them on top of each other so that the direction of the print on the fabric are going the same way on both pieces. Then place the pattern piece on top of your 2 fabrics that you've laid out on top of each other, making sure that the arrow that's in the middle of the paper pattern is lining up with the grain of the fabric, and then you also want to have the stretch of the fabric going across the pattern piece. Then from there, pin all of the layers together and carefully cut it out. So I've just finished pinning the paper piece to my fabric, and I thought I'd just do a quick little close-up of what I've done before I cut it. So again, I've cut my fabric in half and I've laid out one piece going one way and then laid the other piece going on the same way. So our pattern is going both ways on both of our pieces. The stretch of the fabric is going this way, and then I've lined up this arrow on the paper piece going down the center of the fabric. When it comes to all of these notches around the edges, I'm actually going to cut little triangles as we go so that I know that this is the center front seam. Then we've got the center back seam, and then also this little notch here that will then match up with this notch on this side. So hopefully I've sort of covered this bit of getting everything all prepared okay, and that you're still sort of following me. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to carefully cut around the edge of the paper piece and the fabric with my fabric scissors, and then we can move on to do some sewing. I've got my sewing machine all set up and also my overlocker all set up, and now we're ready to start sewing our pieces together. So the first thing that we need to do is, with the right sides together, stitch front to back at inner leg seams of each section. Wait, did that make sense? With right sides together, stitch front to back at inner leg seams of each section. So basically what it's saying is to fold each of your pieces together with the right sides facing, so we want to have the back of the fabric as this white bit, and these spots are our print. Then we're going to just sew down using a 1 centimeter seam allowance along the inner seam of each pant leg. On your sewing machine, if you're not quite sure how to measure a 1 centimeter seam allowance, just get a tape measure, pop the end of it right where the needle is, and measure it in a centimeter. So for me, this is my 1 centimeter line, this one here. So I'm going to put the edge of the fabric along that line, and it's just going to give me a 1 centimeter seam allowance. So there's my nice sewn line with my 1 centimeter seam allowance. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to overlock this whole edge, and I'm just going to clean it up a little bit. And there's my nice lovely overlocked edge. Just sort of gives that nice professional look. Oh, it's really hard in the camera, it's not really picking it up, but it looks good in real life, believe me. So I'm just going to put this leg to one side, and I'll do the other in exactly the same way, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, our next step is to place one leg inside the other and then sew this seam up here. So just following the instructions, it says with the right sides together, insert one leg inside the other, and then with our right sides together we're going to pin the center seam matching the little notches, and then we're going to sew with a 1 centimeter seam allowance, that little sort of U there. Then it says here at the end, to reinforce the seam, stitch again over the first stitching. So we're actually going to do this stitch twice just to give it some strength, because that's what's going to be like between the two legs. So what I've done here is I've actually pulled one leg out the right way, and so I'm going to insert this leg inside of this leg. Okay, so I've gone ahead and pinned that edge together. So it's a little bit dangerous at this point because there's lots of sharp pins in it. So I've just pinned that whole sort of like U bit of the pants, and I actually realized I've made a mistake. Me being the, excuse me, I have a sewing buddy in my room now, my dog, and he's just causing havoc. Excuse me, that's not for you. as I was saying, I realize I've made a mistake. I'm not a dressmaker, so I kind of know what I'm doing, but at the same time I don't know what I'm doing. So, you know, we're winging this together. But I did make a mistake when I was laying out the pattern. When you're laying out your fabric, don't have them both up the same way. Have one with the print side down and then the other with the print side up, and then you'll have two opposite sort of shapes. So, excuse me. Dogs, jeez. So because I actually have cut out two of the same sort of like shape in the leg, we've sort of like putting the front and the back together instead of putting the two fronts together and the two backs. So yeah, so just ignore the step that I did when we were layering our fabric. Just do them opposite ways, but with the print going the same way, and you shouldn't have the problem that I have now. I should be able to get away with it, but just be aware that that's not how you do it. So now I'm just going to sew from edge to edge around this sort of U bit, and then do it again to reinforce the stitch like the pattern says. And then I will overlock that edge as well, and then we'll get on to doing our hems and our waistband, and then it's done. Too easy. A bit hard to see, but I finished that seam. It's a nice sort of a U shape that goes all the way around. I also forgot to mention that when I put this one inside the other leg is that I matched the inside seams with each other and I just nested them, which means that I've got one seam going one way and then the other seam going the other, just so that they're nice and even and they sit nice and flat as well. So now I'm going to pull this leg out and we're going to attempt to do the top edge. We're going to put the elastic in. Okay, so this is an extra step you don't have to do. I'm doing it because I made a mistake at the first hurdle. I've just lined up the top edge and I'm actually just going to trim this off so I have a nice even top line where my waist is. So I'm just going to quickly trim that with some scissors, and then we'll get on to folding over the top for the hem. So our next step is to do the waistline with the elastic inside. So the instructions are telling us to press 1/8 of an inch on upper side to inside, forming a casing, and then press under 1/4 inch on raw edge. Stitch it closed, leaving an opening to insert the elastic. Okay, so my waistline is all pinned together, and I didn't do it in the traditional sense. I sort of did it my own way. What I did is I folded it over and then I folded in this bottom edge like so, and then pinned it. And as I went along, I just made sure that it was wide enough for me to insert my elastic. So I've just sort of kept it at that width the whole length. So I've left a little opening here so we can thread the elastic through. But now I'm going to sew a line all along this fold here to make our waist. Okay, so I've successfully sewn down the waist and I'm pretty happy with it. It looks good. So now it's time to insert the elastic, and what the pattern says to do is to put it around your waist like so. Just kind of stretch it a little bit so that it's to a point where it's comfortable but it's stretched. So that's stretched a little bit and it feels pretty comfortable to me. So happy days. And then it says to add another about 2.5 centimeters. So by eye, that's about there. So that's how much elastic I will need. So where are my scissors? Scissors, oh, they're here. Cut that off. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a pin. I'm going to just put the pin on the end of the elastic and I'm going to thread it through the waist that I've just made. So I'm just going to pop the pin on the end of the elastic so I have something to anchor it and to pull it through the waistband. This is the little hole that I've left, and we're just going to pop this in. This bit you need to be patient and just go with the flow of this one. Just going to insert it into the waist. And which way do I feel more comfortable with? That way, I think. Okay, so I'm just popping it in. I'm just going to thread it through. So the way that I'm doing it is I'm just bunching up the waist over the pin so that I form a little bit of a gather there, like so. It's not going to focus. Like so. No, like so. And then I hold onto the pin on the inside and I just pull that through so that the elastic comes into the waistband. And as I'm doing it, I'm making sure that the elastic isn't rolling inside the waist bit, because rolled elastic inside the waist is never comfortable. So I'm just going to continue to gather that up, pull it through until we come to the other end. Fun times. Okay, so as you go along, it is going to actually gather up the waistband. So once you actually reach to the point where both ends are out, just evenly spread out the gathers along the waist so we're nice and even. Just gonna take the pin out because we don't need that anymore. Thank you, Mr. Pin, you were great. Thank you. Making sure that the elastic hasn't rolled and that the ends are at the same, like, are the same-ish. I'm going to overlap one onto the other, leaving about 2 centimeters or an inch of elastic. So you want them sort of doubled up like that. Just stick a pin in it so they're together. And then what we're going to do is we're going to sew just a square around there so that they're sewn together and they're not going to come apart. Okay, my elastic's all good in there now. Just going to sort out my gathers along this top waist, but that is good for me. It's actually beginning to look like pajama pants now. So next we've got to just close up this edge that we've left open, and then we'll move on to doing the hems at the bottom of the pants, and then we're kind of done. So I've just pinned the closing of my waist with so many pins. I've just pinned it to death because I don't want it to move. So now I'm just going to sew a line to finish it. Another thing that I'm also going to do that the pattern suggests is I'm actually going to sew a line here where my seam is and on the opposite side just to stop the elastic from rolling. So we're moving on to our last step and we're doing our hems at the bottom of our pants. I've already done the first leg. I had a little bit of a play with my sewing gauge and I really like it. So I'm going to show you what I did to hem the bottom of my pants and then we'll sew them into place. So firstly, I've rolled up the bottom of the pant leg. This hem I'm actually going to press so that it's 1/2 inch. I've just done a really quick fold there, and the way that I'm measuring it is I'm putting this top edge along the raw edge of the pant, and then this line here should hopefully meet up with the fold line. So then I should get something that's quite even all along this edge. Okay, so I've pressed all of those edges down. Now I've folded it over, and this hem here I'm actually going to make it 2 centimeters, which is like close to 1 inch. So again, this top edge is going to be along that fold, and then this bottom bit's going to be along the bottom fold, just there. And then once I've got that all pressed into place, I'll pin it so that it's ready to go. my gosh, we're so close to the end, I can taste it. I've just finished sewing the hems down the bottom, and I actually did a double stitch just so it looks maybe a little bit more professional than it really is. Oh no, my battery's flashing. So you can kind of see, or maybe try on the planet here. I just did one stitch and then another stitch next to it just so we've got a double hem, and you can't see it. Maybe on Pusheen. There you go, you can kind of see. So my battery's flashing, so I might pop this on. Oh, and we're so close to the end. Oh no. Last thing I'm going to do to help decipher the back from the front, I'm going to do a little bow. So I'm just going to tie a bow and then literally just sew it onto the pants. So I'm making the back of the pants where I did my little incision for the elastic, and then obviously the opposite side is going to be the front. So I'll pop the bow on there and then they're finished. Yay. Happy days! My pajamas are all finished. Now, just ignore like all the washing on the chair behind me, but what look, they're done. And they fit really good. There's a little bow at the front, but they fit really, really nice. They're a really good length, nice and cozy. And yeah, even though I made a mistake, they're still fine. So that's my little pajama pants tutorial-ish vlog thing done. I hope you got something out of it. I hope it's helped. I hope you were able to follow along. I don't know, I just hope it was good, because I'm not a dressmaker. Half the time I don't know what I'm doing when I'm dressmaking. I'm a quilter, so I don't know, it's a whole other strange sort of venture in sewing for me, but you know, I think I'm pretty good at making pajama pants, but I'm no professional, so just bear that in mind. One thing that I want to say before I go is whenever I did my seams, I always started and finished off with a back stitch, so just remember to do that when you sew your own pants. So let me know if you are going to give these a go. Leave a comment if there's a step that I could have done easier. If you've got any tips or tricks, then let us know so we can make them and have really nice pajama pants to wear. They are super, super comfy. I have them on and I'm not going to take them off because, you know, why not? Why should I? Why should I, Charlie? Huh? So thank you very much for watching this tutorial vlog thing, and I will see you again another time very soon.